Thank you, Joseph, for the background out there. And in the studio, we already have guests that are going to speak on the review of President Tinubu's state visit to the Netherlands. And also, we have in the studio already seated is our usual guest, Ambassador Usman Sarki, former Nigerian Deputy Permanent Secretary, Permanent Representative to United Nations. You are welcome to Good Morning Nigeria, as usual.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here with you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Very good morning.
All right, we also have joining us right here in the studio, Dr. Adoyi Matthew Omale. He's an international affairs analyst. Glad to have you on the program.
Good morning and thanks for having me.
All right, we also have joining us via Zoom, all the way from Lagos, Dr. Adesua Eidiawa, a senior research fellow, International Economic Relations Division of Nigeria, Institute of International Affairs, NIIA. Glad to have you join us, Adesua.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning.
Thank you. Let's kickstart our conversation with Ambassador Usman Sarki now. Let's examine the objectives, actually, of the president's visit to the Netherlands. And how do you think this, aligns with the administration foreign policy?
Yeah, thank you very much. And once again, thank you for having me on the program. And good morning, Nigeria. Well, it has to be underscored that the visit by Mr. President was at the instance, at the invitation of the Dutch or the Prime Minister of the Netherlands. And that is very significant because they recognized that there is a new game plan now in Nigeria in terms of creating dynamism in the Nigerian economy, in the Nigerian space, and to actually, reorganize the country along predictable paths of policy. And that means they have taken cognizance of the policy on subsidy removal, for instance, on forex, foreign exchange regime, and also on monetary and fiscal policy, and the tight control being placed by the government on various sectors of the economy in order to create a semblance of discipline and order. And that means countries are now looking for a situation where they can now reap the advantages of these developments in terms of policy. And the Netherlands, as you know, is a very dynamic country in terms of the economy of the country. They are the fifth largest economy in Europe, and also they have a very huge GDP, which is about $1.3 trillion. And their per capita income in the country is 10s or 11s in the world, $69,000 per person per head. So these are very significant, impressive statistics. And in the area of agriculture, they are a major producer of food and livestock and milk, dairy, and so forth, and processing of agriculture. So all these things dovetail towards the creation of partnership in development to accelerate the development of Nigerian economy. And the Netherlands has been in Nigeria for a long time. So to get back to your question in terms of how this creates an opportunity or dovetails with the Nigerian foreign policy is that, Nigerian foreign policy is predicated on 4 Ds, as the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs enunciated, and one of them is development, one of the 4 Ds. So Mr. President, being the premier foreign policy officer of Nigeria, the foreign policy advocate of Nigeria, the #1 diplomat of Nigeria, it is his duty to sell the country, as it were, by engaging with foreign countries and to expose to them the opportunities that are available in Nigeria in a very credible, sensible, non-flamboyant way, as a statesman should do, to tell them the facts that, look, these are the challenges we are facing in our country, and these are the measures we have taken to overcome or ameliorate those challenges. We want you to join us in order to develop the prospects, the potentials of this country. So foreign policy here is serving the development of the country. and entrenching confidence in the country. And I think, you can imagine, from the date Mr. President went to India for the G20 meeting to today, a lot of investments have flown into the country. And I think that is the forward-looking, proactive foreign policy that we should be expecting to continue, towards the, as the administration continues to grow in office and to develop its strategies for engagement. So we think the foreign policy of Nigeria is now posturing towards creating opportunities to invite investments into the country. And I think that is something very important we should not overlook. The other thing is actually, to create a sense of de-risking the country. There is impression out there that Nigeria is a dangerous place, that it is a very high-risk country to come and invest in because of the negative reports. Your earlier program indicated, you spoke about the insecurity in the country. NTA is highlighting the situation, but you're also presenting another version, another narrative that it's not all that's being said. The reality is that people are coming to Nigeria for business, and Nigerians themselves are cultivating this sense of purpose in what they are doing, despite the challenges here and there that we're experiencing. So President going out there, whether to the World Economic Forum or the G20 Forum or any other engagement bilaterally, is to assure people that Nigeria is not going anywhere. Nigeria is here, we're developing our country, and we're getting on top of the situation. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Saraki. Nigeria is on top of the situation, from what you've said. But I'd like to hear from Dr. Omale. I'm sure you followed the visit of the president and, all the takeaways that have been highlighted by those who accompanied him. What is your impression, of this visit, and what is the likely implication on our economy?
Well, good morning, Nigeria. I think it's one of the most strategic move by the current government, because bilateralism is always a very important aspect of international relations. And if you look at the itinerary of the president, he was able to hold very high-level meetings, especially the Nigerian Dutch Investment Forum, where captains of industries in Nigeria and those of the Netherlands, they have to meet to rub minds on areas that they could come in. You will agree with me that one of the critical problems we have been having is the issue of clearance of goods at our various ports, and our inability to have organized our ports in a very, very good manner that foreign ships could berth, and clearance of goods and services should be done in record time. Now, through this type of visits, this issue of port congestions in Lagos and in many of our ports would have been addressed. We will learn from Netherlands. How are they being able to do it? How have they been able to organize their port system? So if you look at what the minister was saying in the areas of also ICT, a lot of benefits will come to the country because as the Netherlands is one of the most industrialized countries in Europe, as the ambassador has stated when he was making his remarks. So the Netherlands, we will benefit from the Netherlands in that area of technology transfer, in the areas of promoting technology, as the case may be in our country. So it's a very good move by the president. But above all, on the issue of food security, the Netherlands is the second most agriculturally vibrant economy in the world, after the United States of America. They are one of the highest producers of wheat and other products that will be of benefit to the Nigerian economy, especially now that we are trying to diversify from oil economy. Moving into this type of strategic bilateral agreements. I heard the minister talking about setting up a binational commission between Nigeria and the Netherlands. That will be very, very instructive. And as we are trying to diversify our economy away from oil, uh, forging this type of partnership, this type of economic alliance with the Netherlands is the way to go. And the Netherlands is also a very influential country within the European Union, just like the ambassador has said. And with this type of invitation, because one thing that is very strategic or very important for us to note as Nigerians is that this visit was at the behest of the government of Netherlands. That means they recognize that a lot is happening in our country, which they want to be part of, which they want to use this opportunity to encourage their citizens to come and invest in our economy. So I think it's a very good plus for our country. It's a very good plus for Mr. President and for the foreign policy of the Tinubu administration.
Thank you, Dr. Matthew. It's a very good plus for this administration. Okay, let's bring in Dr. Adesua now into this conversation. Dr. Adesua, I mean, let's look at the issue of strengthening diplomatic relations between Nigeria and Netherlands. Do you think this visit will further strengthen the diplomatic relations between the two countries? And what implications do you think this will have for regional and global affairs for the country?
Thank you once again for having me. So yes, this visit surely will deepen diplomatic, already cordial diplomatic relations between Netherlands and Nigeria. It will further deepen the relations. And for me as an economist, and not just as an economist, as a Nigerian, the deepening of diplomatic relations has a high potential for leading to stronger economic relations, stronger economic ties. So what the deepening of these relations with Netherlands will do for us, it has great potential for us to improve our economy. And Netherlands is a country that you want to have strong diplomatic ties and economic ties with for various reasons. It has a very strong economy. I think the ambassador has talked about the GDP and the GDP per capita, which is very impressive. More than that, a more wholesome way of looking at how strong that economy is to look at the economic complexity index of Netherlands. I think for Netherlands is 20, but I think for Nigeria, the economic complexity index is about 119. What that measures is how productive the economy is. Like it measures the capacity, the capabilities of the economy in the area of production. It's a wholesome measure that shows us how economically viable a country is. And you can see that there's a huge difference between 20 and 19. So there's a lot to benefit. Netherlands is also a country that has a strong rule of law, okay, strong governance structure and a strong rule of law. So there's also a lot to benefit from relating more with countries that have shown a great capacity to manage the rule of law, governance in their country, and there's a lot to learn from there as well. Something that really stood out for me with this visit, like everyone has mentioned, is the fact that we were there on the invitation of the Prime Minister and the King and the Queen, and that is vital for us. It shows that they recognize the value of deepening ties, of deepening relations with not just Africa, but specifically with Nigeria. And there's a lot to benefit. There's mutual economic benefits for both of us, for both countries. So, but and one I would like to pick on, if I can, is in the agricultural sector, the use or the introduction of technology in our agricultural sector, our agricultural productivity, which will help to target food. This will help us target our food security issues in Nigeria, because Netherlands is renowned for not just their technology, but for their agricultural advancement. using technological introductions to advance agri. For example, in the area of cattle rearing, there's a lot that we can benefit. As the minister had mentioned, there's a lot that we can benefit from that potential relationship that we are hoping would materialize sooner than later in rearing cattle, in producing milk, because currently the milk production of Nigerian cattle, while while the species of cattle in Nigeria are about 90% of the species are in such a way that their genetic production of milk is not sustainable for it to be preserved for longer, in which case it can now, cater to the entire populace. So there's an opportunity for us there to introduce technology in our cattle rearing sector, in our agricultural sector, specifically cattle rearing, of course, in other areas as well. So for me, it's very exciting to see that the Netherlands see that there's a lot to benefit from us, and obviously we have a lot to benefit from relations with Netherlands.
Dr. Ediawa, of course, so much has been said about the agricultural sector and what we can borrow from Netherlands, but we must also mention, the extensive logistics network that the Netherlands has. They're not just the second largest exporter of agricultural produce after the U.S. It's also on record that vegetables harvested in Netherlands, say today, are bought in New York the same day. So they have a way of doing this export thing. So besides the agricultural part, of course, finding a way to also export so it can be a major revenue earner for us would be a way to go. But looking away from agriculture, let's look at power now. Power is also another area where I think Nigeria can tap from. I'd like to hear your view about that, because we know that about 50 million solar plants has been installed in the Netherlands so far. And in Nigeria, we're still grappling with the national grid and all of that. Could you speak to that?
Well, technology is at the heart of the progress in the power sector in the Netherlands, as it is in Europe. They have strategically calculated that their overdependence on fossil fuel, for instance. Netherlands is a major gas-producing country since the 1950s. But they realized that they need to diversify and move away from fossil fuel to actually generating energy from other sources, particularly clean, renewable sources. So they first concentrated on wind energy. The Netherlands is called the Low Countries. There is a flat land, and it's not a big country, relatively small, 40-something thousand square kilometers, just the size of Kano, or even less than Kano State. So it is very important for us to realize that technology is what drives the economy, what drives the power sector, even the agricultural sector in Netherlands. So we have to now look at how we are going to harness and adapt technology to our power sector in this country. And it's also important for us to realize that their research institutions and their universities are the ones driving these processes in terms of generating economy, in terms of advancing their power sector to the cutting edge. So for us to benefit from that, we have to sit down with them really to structure our conversation around objectives. Today, we are producing maybe less than 5,000 megawatts of power, and even that, we cannot now offtake it efficiently because of transmission and distribution problems. So where will be the areas that the Dutch or the Netherlands companies will come in order to assist us? The federal government has to make up its mind about really, truly diversifying the power sector and also creating opportunities for other parties to come in. Today at the generating area, we have the generating companies. We have given out the concessions to these companies. How efficient, how effective are these companies in terms of generating power? And then the transmission is now still controlled by the federal government. How wise and how efficient is that policy? Are there some strategic considerations behind it to control the transmission in terms of the ownership of the transmission company or facilities by the federal government? would it be possible to also diversify and privatize the transmission sector? What harm will it do to the Nigerian economy if that is done? So these are the questions that we need to ask. Then the distribution itself to off-takers, to industries, to hospitals, to schools, to households. What plans do we have? Now, you have spoken about renewable energy. If you go down the route of renewable energy, how are you going to feed what you have generated into the national grid? Who will be the owner of the transmission of this power that you have generated? At what price per unit are you going to now give it to the to the distribution companies? And the final off-taker, whether it's a household or hospital or school or industry, how much are they going to pay? Will there be a discrepancy between the power produced by the solar or wind farms and then by those that are currently producing in the country? So these are complexities that need to be sorted out by our power institutions in the country. That said, what we need is actually to create discipline in governance, in administration, in terms of controls, in terms of supervision, in terms of compliance. These are the critical areas where we need the government to sit up, to look at these regulatory bodies. Are they doing their work? Are they allowed to do their work? Do they have the requisite knowledge and powers to do their work? Without the efficient and effective involvement of the regulatory agencies, no matter what sort of investment comes into the country, there will be lapses and deficiencies that will defeat the purpose of these investments. So my advice is for the government to really sit down, take a tabletop look at the power sector, dissect it into smaller pieces in terms of the various competencies and roles of the regulatory bodies, and then see where unification can take place in order to harmonize mandates and responsibilities, and also to set targets for each of these units in order to gauge their performance. Without that, I don't think we are going to solve the power and energy challenge in the country. The other issue is the availability of natural gas. We are sitting on top of trillions of square feet, of gas in this country. But always we are told that there is shortage of gas to be supplied to the power stations. Now you ask yourselves, who owns the gas? Is it the Nigerian government or the partners who produce the gas? Under what sort of legal arrangements is gas given to these companies that we cannot even have enough gas to give to our petrochemical companies, our power companies like those in Egbin or Motoshoe and others? What is the problem? So we have to really sit down to do some serious thinking. And also we have to hold the generating companies accountable. For the last 8 or 12 years now, I think, when these concessions have been given to them, what is the rate of their performance? What is the quality of service that they are producing? What is the investments that they have injected into these various generating facilities that they have taken over? So we have to ask questions, because at the end of it all, we are the consumers. We are the ones who are affected. Now, in my state, in Borno State, for instance, I understand that about 14 or 15 local governments are not connected to the national grid. So the state government is spending a lot of money in order to really supply power to these areas. Without electricity, how can you speak of development? It's not possible. So we have to really look at the map of the country to see where the advantage of power sourcing lies. Where can we reap the benefits of wind power, solar power, thermal power, hydropower, gas, and so forth, and then aggregate them together in a way that will now be attractive to investors, whether from Netherlands or anywhere. And also, let us involve Nigerians. there are Nigerian companies that are interested in the power sector, but have they been invited constructively to sit down with the government and other partners to discuss the power sector? I think we need to have really a summit on power in Nigeria if we are serious, to discuss all the complexities, all the challenges of the power sector. And then, based on the aggregate outcomes of this summit discussion, then we can decide where to go. That, I think, is a very strategic move that has to be done now. We cannot delay it any further.
I guess they are already at it already, because, yesterday the National Assembly, they called the power minister, to question concerning the power sector. But besides the power sector, earlier on you mentioned the issue of security, terrorism, and all that. How can we leverage on this relationship with Netherlands, to improve the area of security and terrorism, and bring, kind of sanity, to the country?
Well, as I said, Netherlands is a relatively small country, just the size of Kano State, or about half, just more than half the size of Borno State. So it is very easy for them relatively to control their space in terms of providing security. But the larger picture is the regional arrangement in the EU, whereby security is a collective affair. And if you look at the European Union today, none of the country poses a risk in terms of security to other states in the region. So they have developed a mechanism of collective security, sharing of intelligence, generic sort of training of their forces, and more importantly, a sort of dynamic policy in terms of sharing of information and harmonization of policy in the area of security. Here in Nigeria, with a country that is almost 927,000 square kilometers, with very broad, borders, long borders, and also we are neighboring countries of about 4, 5, or 6 countries. It's not easy to secure the entirety of the country. So here you need, at this modern age, technology in terms of surveillance, monitoring, supervision, and also logistics in terms of quick response by your security forces to go to any spot that is identified as a trouble spot. So intelligence and logistics are very critical. And with the Netherlands, when we sit down to discuss, for instance, the Office of the National Security Advisor, the Office of the Inspector General of Police, and our defense forces, they can now discuss in terms of maritime security. They are very good at that, because today one of the greatest challenges is that we have maritime insecurity in terms of oil theft, in terms of piracy, and general disturbances that are happening in our coastal areas. So even if we just pick this item of maritime security with the Netherlands, it will go a long way in helping our country to stabilize the economy, to stabilize our image in terms of a peaceful and secure country. Then the other aspect is air security. Our aviation sector poses a lot of challenges to operators in this country. We can learn a lot from the Netherlands in terms of controlling of the airspace, in terms of upgrading our airport facilities, airspace management, and so forth. Remember, the security of transportation, logistics, as Madam pointed out, are key to the development of any country. So if you now enhance the security in these sectors, you are creating a psychological situation whereby other partners will now think that you are safe, stable, and they will feel comfortable in dealing with you in terms of whether it's business or tourism. But today, if you now go and ask anybody to come to Nigeria as a tourist, some bells will be ringing in their minds, some danger signals. But if we are able to clear this perception of image of insecurity in Nigeria, I think it will be very easy to sell the country to investors, to potential tourist visitors, and all those sorts of things. So these are the areas that I would recommend that the aftermath of the visit, especially with the establishment of the binational commission, the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs pointed out to, we should identify the area of power, agriculture, and security to discuss with the Netherlands.
All right, thank you so much, Ambassador Seriki. Dr. Omale, you listened to Ambassador, speak extensively about the gains or what we could learn and benefit from the Netherlands. But some Nigerians do not really fancy such visits. They do not think that anything tangible will come out from such visit, and expected investors from other countries to come develop Nigeria. They think that the posture of government has a way of interfering with such visits and how international community relates with Nigeria. For example, there's this viral video of the Prime Minister of the Netherlands walking to his office at The Hague. And people think that if we cut the cost of governance, it would send a clearer signal to the international community that we are ready to develop the nation, one, and to also free resources to be able to attend to some infrastructure of priorities. Do you agree with this thought, as regards that Nigeria itself must first, be able to do certain things, checks and balances, before looking out for investors?
Yeah, I agree with you entirely that we need to also look at ourselves, our culture, our ways of doing things, and then we have to also organize our system in such a way that we can also encourage people to come and invest in our economy. So we have a lot of work to do in that regards. For example, in terms of energy consumption, somebody will have 6 cars, 7 cars, parked, and so on. So in Netherlands, people are encouraged to ride bicycles. So in the morning, you see everybody, they take their bicycle, they go. So all this, one, it helps the environment in terms of pollution. 2, it's also physically, it's good, it's an exercise for the body. And 3, it also gives the, it also allows space. Like Ambassador said, it's a small country. So citizens are encouraged to imbibe the culture of riding bicycle. But here in Nigeria, if anybody sees you riding bicycle, of course, they will just make fun of you or make jest of you that you are riding bicycle. But there, it's part of their culture. Here, we do a lot of wastages. Even in terms of energy consumptions, in terms of our cultural attitudes, needless ceremonies, burial, so many things. So we have a lot, not just cutting cost of governance, we also have to cut cost of our living, because most times we spend a lot of resources on things that are not relevant. On the issue of the visit, because of experience in the past, I remember when we got into democracy, Obasanjo shuttled around the world, successive governments, they keep on traveling all over, and Nigerians will be asking, what are the benefits of all this junketing? In fact, I read on some papers, they call it junketing, traveling up and down to meet. But you see, we cannot isolate ourselves from the rest of the world. The world is a global village, and we have to also engage with the outside world. Yes, a lot of critics will say, oh, the visits are not necessary. But those of us that operate within the international system know that these visits have a lot of positive, a lot of gains for our economy. Because you cannot look at the way our dollar is falling. It's because we have not been able to attract the type of investments that we too can repatriate profit to our country. Look at South Africa is benefiting a lot. Look at ShopRite, look at MTN, look at all their companies here. Where are our companies? Where are our companies that are competing globally? Where are our companies that are leveraging, that are using opportunity. Because there's nothing stop a company in Nigeria from going to the Netherlands, invest in Netherlands, and bring the profits to us. There's nothing stopping any of us. We are complaining that we don't have jobs. But there are opportunities out there all over the globe. And I think that is what the president and the foreign policy experts of this government are thinking. It's a two-way traffic. When we talk about bilateral relations, it's a two-way traffic. Your country benefits and the other country, the two partners will have, it's a mutual beneficial relationship. Now, on the issue of power, which Ambassador was talking about, I needed to make that point. Yes, we have power problem, but you see, the problem I have with this issue of power is, why must we have a national grid? Why must all the power generated be transferred to Osogbo, then Osogbo will start distributing? I mean, can't we have off-grid systems? For example, there's a lot of sunshine in the northern part of the country, there's wind, there are other. So everybody must not be on the national grid. That is where I disagree. States can generate their own power, just like it was done in Plateau with NETCO, where they can have their own area, generate the power. Like you're saying, about 12 local governments in Borno State are not on the national grid. Fine. The governor can implement solar schemes for those local governments. Everybody must not be. The problem we have in the country is that everything is centralized nationally. We should be able to devolve. I was happy recently that states are now allowed to generate electricity. In the past, it was not so. It's a very good omen. Now, states can create their own electricity companies. States can generate their own power. I hear that in Abia State now, there's almost 24 hours power supply, thanks to the geometric company that entered into partnership with the state government, and they are doing well. If that is replicated, we could solve this issue of power. And we need this type of partnership to be able to do this. There are Nigerians in the power sector, but if you look critically at the power sector privatization, a lot of us are agitating that the government should revisit the privatization because of the way and manner these things were. Well, I'm sorry to say, these things were not done as transparent as we would have wished, that Nigerians would have wished. We know that some of these gencos were sold to companies that, to my mind, might not be as competent as we expect them to have been. Because if they are, after 8 years down the line, we should have seen the companies would have transformed the power sector. Because after, it's even worse than when power holding company was there.
So we should have seen an improvement.
Yes, we would have seen an improvement. But we are still struggling with 4,000, 5,000 megawatts. We are still struggling essentially with
about 100 million Nigerians still lacking access to electricity. There's a point you made that this visits are important and all of that. Maybe Ambassador would help me clear this point about the cost of governance, the posture of government. For example, what you talked about, the fact that when they go for such visits, they're able to clear the air that you can come to Nigeria to invest, it's safe and all of that. But looking at, say for example, the security details of our government officials, I gave an example of the Prime Minister of the Netherlands working without escorts, without security details, nothing. And then the posture of our own government officials sends a different signal. How does this lead to a different interpretation for the investors coming into the country?
It's true that there should be concern about the cost of governance or government in this country. And that centers largely in the maintenance of officials, really, and the bureaucracy of the government. So here we need to, like Dr. O'Malley pointed out, this culture of entitlement, this sense of privilege must be removed from holding of office. If you hold office in Nigeria, whether it's elective office or appointed one, you are at the behest of certain institutional frameworks, certain mandates that you have to discharge. It's not a privilege or an entitlement. You are only there to serve the country and the people. For that reason, you have to now assume a profile that is as low as possible in terms of what will be expended on you. But here, unfortunately, the moment an official or a politician is elected into office or an official is appointed into high office, the paraphernalia of office quadruples in some cases, whereby the multiple entitlements aggregated to that person will even outweigh, what his counterpart in another country, actually even in developed countries, will enjoy. So there should be a discussion in Nigeria by Nigerians on the cost of government, and for them to agree and insist that per person, per official, there shouldn't be more than 10 or 15% of the entire expenditure of a certain level that will be going to that to service that particular office. So if you are a minister, for instance, why do you need 3 or 4 or 5 SUVs, some of them bulletproof? Why do you need a convoy of Hilux buses, Hilux pickups following you everywhere with about 7 or 8 details? So these are things that we need to really re-examine in terms of the privileges and entitlements of officials. It wasn't the case, always like that, in the country. In past administration that we have witnessed, governors and ministers move virtually incognito. It was very small escorts. A governor was entitled to just one police ADC who was following him around. But today you find civil defense, police, DSS, and others following one person, all of them carrying pistols and rifles. It conveys a sense of general insecurity when that is done. It's not necessary. But if you are going to a danger zone, for instance, it will not be advisable to expose your minister or governor to danger. They have to be protected, I agree, but it shouldn't be a daily affair. Now, the cost of government will entail looking at the legislature, would entail looking at the executive, and also the judiciary, the 3 arms of the government. And let us not forget, even at the state level, there is this issue of the implication of cost of government. So there must be a debate in the country, a reasoned, rational debate on checking and reducing the cost of government. You are correct, madam, in saying that foreign partners, when they look at this extravagance going on in the country, they will be concerned that we are not a disciplined people. And like Dr. O'Malley said, we need to organize ourselves, create a sense of discipline, a sense of purpose in administration, in governance, for others to take us more seriously. The recent measures taken by the government in creating or harmonizing or collapsing institutions together based on the Oral Senior report. Exactly. It's a very good move. So, but we need to really look at these things as work in progress and take it systematically in order to achieve the goal by maybe 2025. We should have harmonized administration and along the line to also cut the cost of governance.
Okay, thank you very much, Ambassador. Now let's go back to our Zoom guest, Dr. Adesua. Earlier on, you talked about the economic benefits of this visit, especially in the area of agriculture. And, for Nigeria being able to take advantage, to leverage on the technology that abounds in that country to improve our agricultural yields in this country. But I also want to ask, how do you think that this visit will help ordinary Nigerians actually to benefit, particularly in terms of job creation, economic growth, and improved living standards?
Thank you so much. That's a very vital question because the issues of when these visits are ongoing, people ask, how does that translate to money in pockets? How does that translate to more children enrolled in school? How does that translate to macroeconomic indicators improving? And that's a very vital question to answer. And before I go on, I need to say that there's a time lag to investments. So assuming the investments are ready to be pumped into the economy right now, that time lag does exist. But despite that, how does this translate? For example, in the area of waste management, which is one area that the Netherlands government further promised $100 million injection into waste to wealth facility in Lagos. That will go a huge way in impacting the ordinary man in the streets of Lagos. So as we all know, we're dealing with, even though the LOMA, the Lagos State Waste Management Agency, they're relentless in their efforts to sanitize the state, and we see that happening. However, it's not sufficient because the waste production capacity of Lagos State is increasing at a higher rate than they're able to address it. So with this $100 million investment into the waste to wealth facility in Lagos, that would translate almost immediately, as soon as the investment is made, into cleaner markets, into cleaner streets in Lagos. And of course, that facility will employ people. People will be employed. And again, the whole recycling process for the waste to wealth facility will also yield economic gains. More so than that, once that facility is also instituted in Lagos, there's the opportunity for Nigeria to speaking of extending services to neighboring West African countries, there's also the talk about the water management system. And so the water management system is also very important for the common man, because we have, for example, last year about 300 to 500, 2022 and last year, about 300 to 200 people died from flooding. And so far, I think we have 1.4 million in recent times, about 1.4 million people displaced, 3 million people affected by flooding issues in Nigeria. So that waste management introduction, that waste management economic relation with Netherlands will go a long way to affect the common man, to provide relief for people in the flood management will go a long way to provide relief for people in flood-prone areas. The Netherlands have advanced technology. They have low-lying geographical landscape, so they have advanced technology in controlling flood. So the flood management will go a long way in controlling flood in flood-prone areas, which will also translate to making crops available, because the flooding affects the availability of crops, which also leads to food insecurity. So you can see that these investments will easily trickle down to the common man. For example, like I said, in waste management, in water management, which is flood control, and also in supplying potable drinking water to Nigerians. It would make water available to more Nigerians. About 70 million Nigerians right now do not have access to good potable water, 70 million. And so a collaboration, a partnership in water management, in providing, supplying potable drinking water, in learning the technology for waste management and learning the technology for flood control will also translate to benefits for the common man. It will also provide economic opportunities for Nigeria, because we can extend and expand the services to neighboring countries. For example, our neighbors, Niger, who are having a water crisis, we can extend the services to neighboring countries. So there are a myriad of ways that this relationship, am I there, please? Okay, so there are a myriad of ways that this relationship can translate to the common man. Still on agriculture, when the value chain of, when technology is introduced into the agricultural processes, it improves the value chain. Not only are we able to feed the nation, we are also able to diversify our exports by exporting our agricultural products. I know that the Netherlands has said that they will be the first off-takers of the projected and increased productivity of the livestock, the milk from the livestock. But however, that also creates an opportunity for us to improve our technological capacity in processing livestock products and other agricultural products to export to neighboring West African countries or even African countries. For example, we have the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement there, and a lot of questions are out there. Okay, what are we going to export? What are we going to sell? The first thing is to diversify our economy, and this relationship is an important avenue for us to work towards that, assuming, of course, that we handle all our internal and our domestic issues, our macroeconomic issues, because when investors are coming into the country, they want to see what are the macroeconomic indicators. How are domestic investors, how are they faring? So while we are out there looking for foreign investments, what is the situation with our domestic investments? And I think that's another conversation altogether.
Dr. Adesua Ejawa, of course, domestic investments, what are we doing with them? That's a great question. Of course, we'll continue the conversation, but that'll be after the break. Leave it locked. All right, welcome back. It's still Good Morning Nigeria, live on the network service of the NTA, still reviewing the visit of the president to the Netherlands. Our guests are still very much with us, and I'd like to get to Ambassador Saraki now. And of course, I'd like you to respond to the last note where Dr. Adesua, left off, before we went on the break, talking about domestic investors. The question will be that why do we have to look out for foreign, experts, or if you like, investors, to do certain things in this country when we can, leverage on Nigerian investors that we have at the moment and also exploit our diaspora community? That's on one hand. Then secondly, how do you think that this visit to the Netherlands would affect Nigeria's bid for a permanent seat on the United Nations Security Council? Any kind of support you think the Netherlands will give Nigeria?
Yes, indeed. Let me start by actually responding to the second aspect of your question, which is of great interest to me. Cultivating the goodwill and friendship of countries like Netherlands gives you an added advantage, an edge, as it were, in actually going into the Security Council as the preferred candidate for a permanent position in Africa. The Netherlands, as I said, is a very key member of the European Union. And already there is the EU-Africa partnership in terms of harmonizing policy at the multilateral level and also bilaterally with African countries. So Nigeria, leveraging the friendship and goodwill of Netherlands, will contribute to the effective recognition of our bid, of our candidature to the Security Council. And I think it's very good to, as I said earlier, the visit by Mr. President is to show statesmanship, to show maturity, that we have arrived and we are on top of situations. And this idea conveys confidence in our country as a very responsible member state of the international community, whereby when we go into the Security Council as a permanent member, the world can rely on us to make rational choices and to contribute effectively to the maintenance of international peace and security, to contribute to international sustainable development, to contribute to democratization of the world, and respecting of human rights and promotion of human rights. These are the essential purposes of the United Nations. So advancing the UN Charter is done by member states. And countries like Nigeria, with increasing capacity regionally and globally, will be very important in coming on board into the Security Council. So with this visit, there is no reason why the Netherlands should not actually respond favorably to any claim by Nigeria, excuse me, to be recognized as a candidate a viable, effective, logical candidate into the Security Council. So this is an added, it's a step forward. And with the Netherlands, other countries like Spain, Germany, and others will come on board to recognize Nigeria's claim. As to the first remark in terms of the potentials of doing business in Nigeria and investment and why can't we cultivate our own domestic and diaspora, it's very important for us to realize, as Dr. Adesua said, that investments they create momentum in the economy. It doesn't matter where they come from, whether they are domestic or diaspora or actually foreign investment. But the key is, what do you do with the investments? Where will the investment be directed? Do you have the capacity to absorb the investments? What are your policies to attract investments? When we deal with the Netherlands, for instance, have we thought about the capacity of our banking sector? They have very strong, well-recognized, globally recognized banking institutions in the Netherlands. Are our banks up to the task in terms of supporting and creating opportunities for financial flows into the country? Is there transparency? Is there competence? Is there security in our banking system? So these are the questions that we have to ask when dealing with countries like Netherlands. And they are going to ask the same question. They will do forensic examination and studies of our banks. Without the banks, there can be no investments because you have to move capital from one part of the world to the other, and you have to account for it. With this idea of money laundering and other things or other concerns about fueling of terrorism and so forth, countries that move money from one point to the other are very concerned about the safety, the security, and the end target or the end results of the money they are moving. So it's very important for us to show capacity, to show seriousness and discipline and organization in dealing with foreign countries for them to be comfortable with us. The Nigerian diaspora, they are also concerned about their money, their investment. When their money comes into Nigeria, they expect, number one, for that money to be secure, and where they invest it to generate returns for them. So the federal government and the state governments must now institute policies and programs that will secure the investment space in the country. And it's very important, as I said earlier, for regulatory agencies to be up to scratch in terms of conveying a sense of purpose and seriousness to the world. So the organization of the government and institutions are very critical. Now, the other aspect, finally, I think what Dr. Adesua raised about agriculture is very important. Only 2% of the Netherlands population is engaged in agriculture. But they are today the world's #1 producer after America. And they export to the whole world just 2% of that country. Why? Because of science and technology. Their research institutions churn out ideas, and their government and companies practicalize those ideas. So mechanization, injection of science and technology into agriculture has reduced even the role of human beings in production. So when we look at the Netherlands today, we should now actually seek for competencies whereby our research institutions can be upgraded. Some of them are still working with facilities of the 1960s and 70s. How go to VOM, the Animal Veterinary Research Institute today, is a shadow of its former self. Go to NAPRI in Shika or Sama Rosaria, it's a shadow of its former self. Go to all the research institutions in the country today. NTA, I think, should do a survey of the research institutions, of the science and technology institutions, for you to really tell Nigerians what is the state of their capacities and capabilities today. Do they have the required resources to really do research and transform the economy, whether in agriculture or industry or anywhere? They don't. They need capital, they need modern equipments, they need training, they need laboratories, they need facilities and everything. Talk to them, go to them and see what they have. So the Netherlands, when they come in, they are not going to now just bring money and go back. They want to engage with institutions. And where are those institutions? What are they? What are their capacities? So if very recently, the Borno State Governor, His Excellency Professor Babagana Marazulu, met with Mr. President to highlight the importance of the South Chad irrigation scheme, for instance, to the President. The South Chad irrigation scheme has over 200,000 hectares of land where you can produce virtually everything there. But the problem is access to water. So the recharging of Lake Chad should be one of the priorities when we discuss with the Netherlands and the European Union to support the federal government's objective of recharging Lake Chad from internal waterways in order to make the South Chad irrigation scheme viable. And the control of floods in central Nigeria and southeastern Nigeria is very critical, because when floods come, they are now, because of climate change, happening every year. If you don't control them, economic productivity, farming and everything will be adversely affected. So when we speak with the Netherlands, we take a look at the country. Where are we going to establish projects? Where are we going to prioritize programs and so forth? So to my mind, the South Chad project, the flood control in central and southeastern Nigeria are very critical. And we should look at that as part of the physical objectives that we can undertake.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you for your thoughts there. We must actually show competence and, seriousness in all that we do. Let's bring in Dr. Amale now. I want you to, we're still looking at the visit and the influence and the benefits, especially Nigeria's stance on global issues like climate change, human rights, and migration. What common ground can we expect, with Netherlands with this visit?
Yeah, Nigeria and Netherlands, we share similar, we've come a long way in our bilateral relationship. We can learn a lot from their democracy. Netherlands is a democratic country. We can learn from the way they do their things, the way they organize their country. I always tell people that most times if we look at developed societies, we want to be like them. But most of the positive things they do, instead of us copying it, we don't copy them. Or when we copy, we copy wrongly, or we copy it upside down. But on a serious note, we have a lot to learn from how their democracy, how their system is operating. And if nothing else, that will help build our economy. Then secondly, like we said earlier, the issue of technology transfer. We have a lot to learn from Netherlands in the area of technology transfer, especially like we also in the area of agriculture, in the area of services, banking, in the areas of banking, in the areas of, and several other sectors. We have a lot to learn from the Netherlands. Look at the aviation sector, for example. KLM is one of the biggest airlines in the world. And up till now, we don't have an Air Nigeria or something like that. So we can also partner with KLM to see how we can jumpstart our Nigerian air, or also refurbish our airports to international standards. So we have a lot to learn. Nigeria has a lot to benefit from this relationship. Like I said, in the area of democracy, in the area of agricultural output, in the area of services, we have a lot to benefit as a country. And also the Netherlands too. We also need Nigeria as a very strategic partner. Nigeria is the largest country in Africa in terms of population, and Nigeria also is a regional power within Africa. So the Netherlands will benefit tremendously from a strategic partner with a country like Nigeria. The Netherlands will be able to have a very important inroad into sub-Saharan Africa. And I think that is very instructive. I think they realize the importance of Nigeria, and that is why they are engaging with Nigeria. Also, exchange programs between scholarships to students, as the Minister of Communication said. Exchange program has been ongoing between the two countries. They've been giving a lot of scholarship to Nigerians to study in the Netherlands, and I think that will continue. This visit will further strengthen such exchange between Nigeria and the Netherlands.
Well, I want to, Nigeria's stance on the issue of climate change, migration, and all that, and what Nigeria is pushing for. With this visit, do you think Netherlands will support, Nigeria's stand on climate change, for instance?
Yes. I think we are all agreed about issues of climate change. The most important thing now is how do we mitigate the effects of climate change? How do we cut down gas emissions? How do we cut down? Yeah, definitely. Nigeria and Netherlands will look at the importance of adhering to most of the issues that will address or mitigate the impact of climate change. So I think this type of visit will help a lot, especially in terms of cutting down carbon emissions. The Netherlands will play a role in supporting us because they also have the technology, they have the expertise, they have the experience. Like we talked earlier, we talked about them moving to renewable energy. Okay. We have a lot to learn in that aspect. So definitely Nigeria and Netherlands are on the same page on the issue of climate change, and Nigeria will benefit a lot from the expertise of Netherlands, how they have been able to organize their society in such a way that the energy transition from to renewable energy will benefit a lot from that partnership in terms of climate change issues. And even in the international front, Nigeria has also been one of the vocal. We participated in the recent conference, climate change conference in Dubai. And I think most of the issues that were raised, they are in tandem with the Netherlands and Nigeria. I think we are on the same page. We don't have any cause whatsoever to have any sharp disagreement on the issue of climate change.
All right, thank you, Dr. Omale. Dr. Ejiawa, I know you're still very much with us. Most times when we talk about such visits, we look at the implication and the impact on our economy right here in Nigeria. Let's take a second to take a look at what would this mean for Nigerians in diaspora, Nigerians in the Netherlands, for example. Now, this visit by the president, what does it portend for them, the implication for Nigerians there? And also, could you also tell us how are we going to be able to measure the success of this visit, in the long run? And then what are the implications for Nigeria's international reputation and global influence?
Thank you so much. Before I do that, I just want to quickly, in response to His Excellency, Sir, the Ambassador, about domestic investments. It's not so much a question, as I mentioned, wasn't so much a question of do we prefer domestic investments over foreign direct investments? No, it's more of ensuring that we extol the two in such a way that we have maximum economic benefits, in such a way that the most people benefit from both foreign direct investment, like the drive that the president is on a foreign direct investment drive, and the maximum benefit from both that and domestic investment. Also, domestic investment is an indicator of how well the economy, the Nigerian macroeconomy is doing, the success and the extent to which domestic investment is thriving, and the state of the Nigerian economy right now in that regard. It's we have businesses, some especially small, medium enterprises closing down, even some large enterprises closing down. Another reason why we would prefer domestic investment to foreign investment is domestic investment employs more people. okay, employs more people. Although foreign investment would improve the quality of employment because it will probably be employing more skilled workers, but domestic investment employs more people. So unemployment rates will be, driven down to a relatively large extent. Both are very important. So as you said about the relation, Nigerians in diaspora, especially in the Netherlands, I think it's, for example, that Nigerian Dutch Business Investment Forum would create opportunities for businesses, Nigerian businesses in Netherlands. So existing businesses in Netherlands as well as new businesses. I want to believe and I want to hope that there were some good representation of the private sector in that meeting from Nigeria and as well as from the Netherlands. So that engagement with businesses and investors in Netherlands, indigenous businesses and indigenous investors in Netherlands, alongside engaging Nigerian business and investors from Nigeria and also domiciled in Netherlands, will provide a forum for engagement that should give birth or that should yield more business, more investment for both countries. Also, on the diplomatic front, it improves and it deepens the relationship between the two countries. The embassies, the Nigerian embassy in the Netherlands improves the relationship. It gives the Nigerians there a stronger sense of, when you build a people-to-people diplomacy, and it gives them a stronger sense of being well represented. And then also you talked about how long it will take for these engagements to materialize. I think that is not really very clear to tell the timeline it will take. So first of all, these are agreements. So both parties need to go back to the drawing room, right? Go back to their drawing room, especially the investors. They, like Ambassador said, they need to come and engage not just their researchers, but research institutes in Nigeria. They need to come and engage and carry out to see the economy for themselves, to see really, truly how viable. So all of those will take some time for investors to make the actual move, to actually implement in the chosen sectors. For example.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adesua there. We sincerely apologize for cutting you short there because of our time. We have to cut you short. But let's just take a parting word from the ambassador now in terms of implementation, which has always been the major, challenge that we have concerning all these visits. How best do you think, all these gains can be well implemented, so that we can actually derive the benefits in less than 60 seconds, sir?
Well, there should be immediately an interministerial meeting on the outcomes of Mr. President's visit to the Netherlands to examine the decisions taken between the two countries and translate them into action according to the mandates of the ministries. This is very critical. So I will advise the Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs to immediately call for an interministerial meeting, particularly around agriculture, power, transportation, and so forth, in order to examine where the areas that could be leveraged based on the decisions that the Prime Minister of the Netherlands and the President of Nigeria have arrived at. Is very critical. And then for them now to submit an advisory note to Mr. President that this is the best way to go on the sectoral dissection of outcomes from your discussion with your Netherlands counterpart.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Usman Saraki, former Nigerian Deputy Permanent Representative to the United Nations. Many thanks for your thoughts and your time. We appreciate you. Of course, Dr. Adoyi Matthew Omale, International Affairs Analyst, many thanks for joining us for the conversation.
Thank you.
And we also sincerely appreciate Dr. Adesua Eyediawa, Senior Research Fellow, International Economic Relations Division of Nigerian Institute of International Affairs. Many thanks for being a part of the conversation. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you.
This Tuesday. We're sure you enjoyed it. Remain tuned to the NTA. I'm Ray John.